Today was not an ordinary day. Today, she was being taken to court. Inside the cell block, officers were already assembled. The metallic clang of keys echoed through the hall as the warden led the way toward the most secured cell. Behind the steel bars sat a woman, thin, pale, but with eyes so sharp they could cut through glass. Her name was Sonia Malik, a 32-year-old former explosives expert, now accused of orchestrating a deadly attack on a government building. The media had painted her as a monster. The state wanted her executed. But Sonia just sat there, silent, a faint smile tugging at the corner of her lips, as if she knew something the rest of the world didn't. The guards opened the cell. Heavy shackles clamped around her ankles and wrists. A thick iron chain connected the cuffs, limiting her movement. 2 slow, awkward steps. They checked her twice, even ran a metal detector, but found nothing unusual. Still, the uneasiness in the air refused to fade. "Move," barked Officer Khan, gripping her arm as they marched her toward the waiting van. Outside, the convoy was ready. A reinforced prison van with barred windows. 2 police jeeps, one in front, one behind and trailing close. A K9 unit vehicle, with a black German Shepherd inside, panting lightly, eyes alert. His name was Rex, the best trained dog in the force, a hero who had saved lives before. Nobody knew that today. Rex would once again prove why instincts should never be ignored. The engines roared to life. Rain began to drizzle as the convoy pulled away from the prison gates. Sonia sat inside the van, shackles clinking softly with every bump on the road. 2 armed guards flanked her, their fingers resting on their rifles. One of them, Officer Imran, glanced at her and muttered, "Enjoy the ride, might be your last trip." She didn't respond. Instead, her eyes wandered to the small vent at the corner of the van, where drops of rain trickled inside. Then came a smirk. Quiet, cold, almost chilling. Behind them, Rex sat in his cage, calm at first. His handler, Officer Sara, kept an eye on him through the mirror. She noticed something. His ears twitched. His breathing grew heavier, sharper. Sara frowned. Rex was picking up a scent. But from where? 5 minutes later, the convoy entered a stretch of lonely highway flanked by dense woods. Visibility was poor due to the thick mist rolling in. Sara adjusted her radio and called the lead jeep. "Unit 3 here. Rex is agitated. Could be nothing, but keep alert." Before she could finish, Rex stood up suddenly, his nose pressing against the cage door. His tail stiffened. A low growl escaped his throat. "What is it, boy?" Sara whispered, pulling over slightly closer to the van. Now Rex began barking short, sharp barks, the kind he only gave when detecting explosives. Sara's heart skipped. She grabbed the radio. "Stop the convoy." Now tires screeched as the vehicles halted in the middle of the empty road. Officers jumped out, weapons drawn. Sonia looked up calmly, as if this was all part of her plan. Sara rushed to the van, Rex tugging violently at his leash, barking like a demon unleashed. His nose pointed straight at Sonia's shackled feet. "What the hell is going on?" shouted Officer Khan. Rex smelled something on her. Sara yelled back, "Open the van, now." The officers hesitated. Rain poured harder, drenching their uniforms, mixing with sweat. The air was thick with fear. What could the dog possibly sense? They had searched her twice. "Do it," Sara barked. The van door swung open. Rex leaped inside before anyone could stop him, his snout pressing against Sonia's ankles. He growled and scratched at the heavy iron shackles. "Check her chains," Sara ordered. Officer Imran knelt and ran his fingers over the thick metal. At first glance, nothing unusual, just solid iron cuffs. But then his finger caught on something, a tiny, unnatural ridge near the hinge. "Wait," he murmured. Pulling out a screwdriver, he pried it open. The shackles cracked apart and out fell a small cylindrical capsule, no bigger than a lipstick tube. The moment it hit the ground, Rex barked frantically, stepping back, ears flat. Sara's blood ran cold. She knew that reaction. "Don't touch it," she screamed. The bomb squad was called immediately. They confirmed the worst, a micro-explosive device rigged with a chemical trigger enough to kill everyone in the van, and destroy the courthouse if smuggled inside. The plan was genius in its simplicity. Hide the bomb inside the prisoner's chains. Nobody would suspect. Sonia just had to get inside the court building, then detonate it remotely or through body movement. If Rex hadn't picked up the scent, the entire courthouse packed with judges, lawyers, and civilians would have been reduced to ashes. Sonia finally broke her silence. She laughed, a hollow, chilling laugh that echoed through the misty highway. "You think you've won," she hissed, her voice sharp as broken glass. This was just one piece of the game. Officers dragged her out, tightened reinforced cuffs around her wrists. Sonia kept smiling, even as they shoved her back into the van. Hours later, the convoy resumed, this time under triple security. The courthouse was evacuated. The bomb squad swept every inch of the building, and news channels exploded with breaking headlines. Police canine foils, deadly terror plot saves hundreds. Rex sat proudly beside Sara, his fur still damp from the rain, his eyes calm but alert. Officers gathered around, patting him, calling him a hero. But Sara knew this wasn't luck. This was instinct, pure, unshakable instinct. As the sun finally pierced through the storm clouds, Sara looked at Rex and whispered, "Good boy. You didn't just stop a bomb. You stopped a massacre." And somewhere, in the back of the prison van, Sonia sat in silence. The smirk was gone, replaced by something darker: hatred. This wasn't over. Not that the day began with chaos inside the old city courthouse. Cameras flashed as journalists gathered outside the prison gates, waiting for a glimpse of the woman who had become the most talked about name in the city. Her name was Mira Khan, 28 years old, soft-spoken, a schoolteacher by profession, now accused of being a drug mule for one of the most dangerous cartels in the country. Everyone believed she was guilty, everyone except herself. In her cold, dimly lit cell, Mira sat silently with her hands clasped, lips moving in a whisper only she could hear. A prayer, perhaps, or just an attempt to hold on to hope. The sound of boots echoed through the hallway as two officers approached. One of them, Officer Rafiq, carried the chain cuffs in his hands. "Let's go," he said curtly. Mira looked up, fear flashing in her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "I didn't do this. I'm innocent." Rafiq snorted. "Save it for the judge." The shackles clamped around her ankles and wrists with a loud metallic snap. A heavy chain joined them, limiting her movement. The cold iron bit into her skin as she was escorted out. Outside, the convoy waited, a black prison van, 2 escort jeeps, and a canine unit trailing behind. Inside the canine vehicle sat Rex, the German shepherd with a reputation for being the best in the department. His handler, Sara, patted his head gently. "Another day, another bad guy, huh?" she murmured. Rex didn't react much, just kept his gaze fixed on the prison doors, his nose twitching ever so slightly as the rain-scented wind blew past. Mira was pushed into the van. 2 guards sat on either side of her, rifles slung across their chests. The ride began in silence. The streets were nearly empty, washed by the early morning drizzle. Mira kept her head down, tears rolling silently down her cheeks. She didn't cry loudly. She had no strength left for that. Every word she had spoken for the past 2 months had been ignored. Her pleas, her truth, all buried under the weight of planted evidence. In the canine vehicle, Rex suddenly lifted his head. His ears perked, his body tensed. Sara noticed immediately. "What is it, boy?" she whispered. Rex leaned forward, sniffing the air through the half-open window. His breathing grew heavier, a low growl rumbling in his throat. Sara frowned, picked up the radio. "Unit 3 reporting. Rex is alerting on something. Keep your eyes open." The lead jeep acknowledged with a casual response. But before Sara could say more, Rex barked sharply. Once, twice. Then he started, whining, pulling at the leash inside his cage, desperate to move forward. Sara's pulse quickened. She had seen this behavior before. This wasn't aggression, this was a signal. Rex had detected something unusual, but what? The convoy rolled through a deserted stretch of highway flanked by thick trees. The mist was thick, the rain steady. Sara gripped the radio again. "All units, slow down. We might have a problem." The prison van came to a crawl. Inside, Mira looked up, startled, sensing the tension. Officer Rafiq cursed under his breath. "What now?" Rex barked again, louder this time, his eyes locked on the prison van ahead. Without waiting for permission, Sara hit the siren and pulled closer, signaling the convoy to stop. The vehicles screeched to a halt on the slick road. Doors flew open. Officers spilled out, weapons drawn, scanning the foggy woods around them. But Rex wasn't looking at the trees. His nose pointed straight toward the van carrying Mira. His body stiff, tail rigid, he barked and growled, straining against the leash as if trying to rip free. Sara rushed to the van. "Open it," she ordered. Officer Rafik frowned. "What for?" "Rex smells something," she snapped. "Could be explosives." "Drugs." "Open it." Grumbling, Rafik swung the door open. Rex lunged forward, almost knocking Sara off her feet, and leaped inside the van. Mira flinched in terror as the dog circled her, sniffing every inch of her shackled body. He growled, not at her face, not at her clothes, but at the officer sitting next to her. Sara's eyes narrowed. "Hold on," she said slowly. "He's alerting on you." The officer stiffened. "What the hell are you talking about?" But before he could say more, Rex growled louder, his teeth bared, barking at the man's boots. Sara knelt quickly, running her hand along the seams of the officer's trousers. At first, nothing. Then her fingers touched something out a thick, uneven patch near the ankle. "What's this?" she demanded. The officer stammered. "It's nothing." Sara ripped the fabric open. Out spilled a small plastic packet, tightly sealed, filled with a fine white powder. Silence fell like a hammer. Sara picked it up with her gloved hand, holding it high for everyone to see. "Cocaine," she said coldly. The other officers exchanged shocked glances. The man froze, his face pale. Mira stared, speechless, tears brimming in her eyes, not from fear, but from the raw, overwhelming wave of vindication. "I told you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I told you I was innocent." Sara's jaw tightened as she turned to the corrupt officer. "You were setting her up," she said, "using her transfer to move your stash." The man lunged, suddenly, trying to grab the packet, but two guards tackled him to the ground. He screamed curses as they cuffed him, dragging him out of the van. Sara sat beside Mira for a moment, her voice softening. "You really didn't know about any of this, did you?" Mira shook her head, sobbing silently. "I'm a teacher," she whispered. "I was coming home from school when they arrested me." Sara exhaled slowly, looking at Rex, who now sat calmly at her feet, tail wagging as if proud of his work. She stroked his fur. "You just saved an innocent life, boy." The convoy turned around and headed back to the city, the atmosphere heavy with shame and disbelief. News broke within hours. A police officer arrested for drug smuggling during prisoner transfer. The accused teacher cleared of charges thanks to a K9 alert. The headlines hailed Rex as a hero. His photo splashed across every channel. Later that evening, as the storm clouds cleared and a golden sunset bathed the city in light, Mira stepped out of the courthouse a free woman. She turned to Sara and Rex, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. Sara smiled faintly. "Don't thank me," she said, glancing down at the dog. "Thank him." Rex wagged his tail, unaware that his instinct had changed. The course of someone's life forever, far away, in a cold interrogation room. The disgraced officer sat in chains, head bowed, his career in ruins. And somewhere deep inside the system, whispers began. How many more like him were hiding in plain sight? But for now, justice had won. All because one dog refused to ignore what his nose told him. The day broke with a red dawn, the sky burning like fire as the sun clawed its way above the horizon. It was the kind of morning that made everything look sharper, more dangerous. On the outskirts of the city, a maximum security prison was buzzing with activity. Today, one of its most notorious inmates was being taken to court. Her name was Nadia Romana, name whispered in the alleys of crime and feared even by hardened gang leaders. She was 35, tall, and striking even in a faded prison uniform. But it wasn't her beauty that made her dangerous. It was her mind, calculating, patient, the kind of mind that could turn a hopeless situation into an opportunity. Nadia had been charged with multiple counts of armed robbery and suspected links to an organized crime syndicate. The trial was set for today, and the authorities wanted her under the tightest security possible. The prison gates creaked open as officers escorted her out. Chains clinked at her wrists and ankles, connecting to a heavy iron belt around her waist. Two officers flanked her, rifles slung across their chests. Nadia walked with her head held high, her face calm, almost serene. But deep inside, her heart beat with a secret rhythm, a countdown she had been rehearsing for months. The convoy was ready, a reinforced prison van, two police jeeps, and, as always, the K9 unit at the rear. Inside the K9 vehicle sat Rex, the German shepherd with a nose that never lied. His handler, Sara, adjusted the strap of her vest and glanced at him. "Stay sharp, boy," she murmured, Rex's ears twitched, but his eyes stayed fixed on the van ahead. The engines roared to life, and the convoy rolled out of the prison gates. The city streets blurred past as they headed toward the courthouse. Inside the van, Nadia sat between two guards. Her hands rested on her lap, her face expressionless. But under the loose fabric of her prison uniform, hidden in a seam she had carefully stitched with thread from her bedding, was a device no one had found during the searches, a GPS tracker. Small, silent, deadly accurate. As the van rumbled down the highway, Nadia tilted her head slightly, her eyes flickering toward the window. Somewhere out there, beyond the trees and the mist, her people were waiting. The plan was simple: track her location, ambush the convoy, and get her out before she reached the courthouse. It was bold, risky, but Nadia had never believed in playing safe. In the K9 unit, Rex suddenly lifted his head, his ears pricked forward, nose twitching rapidly as if he had caught a scent carried on the wind. Sara noticed immediately. "What is it?" she whispered. Rex gave a low growl, his body tensing. Then he barked sharply once, twice, 3 times in quick succession. Sara's stomach knotted. She had seen this before. Something was wrong. Grabbed the radio. "Unit 3 to lead vehicle. Rex is alerting. Slow down and pull over." The response crackled back with irritation. "What now, Sara? Just do it," she snapped. "This isn't nothing." The convoy slowed tires, crunching against wet gravel as they pulled onto the shoulder of a deserted road. The mist was thick here, curling like smoke around the trees. Sara jumped out, Rex straining against the leash. The dog lunged forward, dragging her toward the van. His nose pressed against the metal, barking furiously. "Open it," Sara ordered. One of the guards frowned. "We searched her already." "Open it," she repeated, her voice cutting through the mist like a blade. The van door creaked open. Rex leaped inside before anyone could stop him. He circled Nadia once, twice, his growls deepening. Then he stopped, his snout pressed against her side, near the seam of her uniform. "What's in there?" Sara demanded, her eyes locking on the fabric. Nadia said nothing. Her face was calm, but her heart hammered so loudly she thought they could hear it. Sara crouched, running her fingers along the seam. At first, nothing. Then she felt a hard edge beneath the cloth. She ripped it open. Out fell a tiny black device, no bigger than a coin, with a blinking red light. Sara froze. "GPS tracker," she muttered. The realization hit like a thunderclap. This wasn't just contraband. This was an escape plan in motion. Somewhere out there, people were tracking this signal. Maybe they were already on their way. "Kill the signal," Sara barked. One officer smashed the device under his boot. The light flickered, then died. Sara grabbed the radio. "All units, move. We have an ambush. Risk. Double time to the courthouse." The convoy roared back to life, engines screaming. As they tore down the wet road, Nadia sat silently, her plan crumbling before her eyes. For the first time, her calm cracked, a flicker of rage flashing across her face. She had counted on everything: timing, execution, loyalty, but she had underestimated one thing: a dog's instinct. A dog's instinct. Rex sat beside Sara in the K9 unit, his fur damp from the mist, his eyes bright with alertness. Sara reached over, scratching behind his ears. "Good boy," she whispered. "You just saved us from a bloodbath." Hours later, the courthouse was surrounded by layers of security. Nadia was dragged inside, her chains heavier now, her every move watched by armed officers. The trial proceeded, but her mind wasn't on the judge or the lawyers. It was on the sound of that dog barking. The moment everything unraveled because of a nose that refused to miss what humans overlooked. That night, news channels ran the headline: K9 foils deadly escape, plot prisoner's secret GPS device discovered during transfer. The photo of Rex appeared on every screen, his tongue lolling out in what looked like a proud grin. But for Nadia, sitting in a cold cell once more, the smile on the dog's face was burned into her memory, not as an image of victory, but as the mark of her defeat. And somewhere, beyond the city limits, men with guns cursed into the dark. Their plans shattered. Their boss still behind bars all because of a German shepherd, who didn't know how to ignore the truth. The city was waking up to the sound of distant sirens and the hum of traffic when the gates of the high-security prison creaked open. A grey morning mist clung to the streets, wrapping everything in a veil of unease. Today was the day Sara Ahmed was to stand trial, a case that had captured headlines for months. To the public, she was a cold-blooded murderer, accused of killing a prominent businessman. To those who knew her, she was something else entirely: clever, calculating, and capable of anything. Inside her cell, Sara sat calmly on a metal bench, her posture elegant despite the faded orange jumpsuit. Her fingers traced the edge of a paper cup, eyes distant, lips curved in a faint smile. She looked like someone waiting for a ride, not a woman walking toward a death sentence. When the guards entered, she rose gracefully, offering her wrists without protest as the cuffs clicked shut. Heavy shackles chained her ankles, connected by an iron loop to her waist belt. "Let's go," said Officer Haroun, his voice curt. Sara glanced at him, her dark eyes glimmering with something unreadable. "Such a rush," she murmured softly, almost teasing. Haroun ignored her and motioned to the others. Outside, the convoy was ready, a black prison van in the middle, 2 armed jeeps fore and aft, and, trailing close, the K9 unit. Inside the K9 vehicle sat Rex, the German shepherd whose reputation was as fierce as his bite. His handler, Sara, adjusted the radio, stealing a glance at the dog. "Another big day," she said quietly, patting his head. Rex stayed silent, his nose twitching as if the mist carried secrets only he could smell. The van door slammed. Sara stepped inside, settling on the bench between 2 guards. Her movements were slow, almost graceful, as if every second was part of a rehearsed performance. When the engine growled and the van began to roll, she closed her eyes and exhaled softly, lips curling in a small, knowing smile. Half an hour into the journey, the world outside blurred into an endless stretch of grey highway. The mist thickened, curling through the trees that flanked the road. Inside the van, silence hung heavy until Sara spoke, her voice low and smooth. "Water," she said. One of the guards glanced at Haroun, who shrugged and handed her a bottle from the small crate near the door. She took it, unscrewed the cap slowly, and took a delicate sip. Then she smiled faintly, as though savoring a private victory. Behind them, in the K9 vehicle, Rex lifted his head abruptly. His body stiffened, ears pricking forward. He sniffed the air once, twice, then let out a sharp bark that jolted Sara upright. "What is it, boy?" she asked, leaning forward. Rex barked, again, louder this time, his teeth bared in a low growl. Sara felt her gut tighten. She knew this signal. Rex wasn't alerting for explosives. This was different. A chemical trace, maybe. Something dangerous. She grabbed the radio. "Unit 3 to lead. Slow it down. We have a possible alert." Static crackled before Haroun's voice came through, annoyed. "Sara, what now?" "We searched her twice." "I don't care," Sara snapped. "Pull over now." The convoy screeched to a halt on the empty road. Doors flew open as officers jumped out, scanning the misty woods around them. Sara was already running toward the van, Rex straining against the leash like a creature possessed. The moment the door opened, he lunged inside, his nose pressing against Sara's hands, the bottle still clutched between them. He growled, pawing at her wrists with frantic urgency. "What the hell?" Haroun started, but Sara's voice cut him off like a blade. "Take the bottle now." One officer snatched it from Sara's hands. She watched calmly, her face unreadable, as Sara unscrewed the cap and sniffed. Her stomach clenched. The faint, bitter scent was unmistakable cyanide, or something close to it, dissolved into the liquid. Enough to kill in seconds. Haroun's face went pale. "What the why?" Sara's voice was cold steel. She wasn't planning to escape. She was planning to kill someone. Sara's lips curved in a slow, poisonous smile. "The judge," she whispered softly, almost like a lover's confession. "He destroyed everything I loved. Today was going to be his last breath." Her tone was calm, serene, like someone explaining a recipe rather than a murder plot. The officers froze. The realization hit them like a hammer. Sara had intended to smuggle the poison into the courthouse, slip it into the judge's tea during a breaker plan, so audacious it might have worked if not for the dog standing between her and vengeance. "Get her out," Sara ordered. The guards yanked Sara to her feet, chaining her tighter as her laughter rang out a low, chilling sound that echoed through the fog. "Do you really think you've won?" she hissed as they shoved her back into the van. "The world is full of poison. All it needs is the right hand to pour it." The convoy turned back, toward the prison at full speed, sirens wailing through the mist. In the K9 unit, Rex sat quietly now, his tail wagging faintly as Sara stroked his fur. "Good boy," she whispered, her voice thick with relief. "You didn't just save a judge, you saved all of us from a bloodbath." Hours later, the news exploded across every screen. Canine dog prevents courthouse assassination poison. Plot foiled during prisoner transfer. The image of Rex, his dark eyes gleaming like embers, became a symbol of silent heroism. That night, as Sara sat in solitary confinement, her smile finally faded, not because her plan had failed, but because it had been undone by something she had never calculated: a dog's instinct. And as darkness swallowed the cell, she whispered softly to herself, "Next time, no mistakes." Outside, under the silver glow of the moon, Rex dozed peacefully in his kennel, unaware that his nose had changed the course of destiny yet again. The night was heavy with rain, pounding against the asphalt like a drumbeat of warning. Inside the small barracks of the city's special transport unit, fluorescent lights flickered, casting long shadows on the damp floor. Sara sat hunched over a steel table, her uniform soaked from the day's chaos. Rex lay at her feet, his breathing slow and steady, the rise and fall of his chest a comfort in the uneasy silence. She replayed the day in her head, the poison plot, the cold smile on Sara's face, the way it had all felt too perfect, too rehearsed. Something about it gnawed at her. People like Sara didn't make mistakes, not unless someone wanted them to fail. Sara stared at the half-empty cup of coffee in front of her, the bitter taste clinging to her tongue. "There's more to this," she murmured under her breath. Rex's ears twitched, as if agreeing. Morning broke grey and sullen. The rain reduced to a drizzle. The unit was already on high alert. Another prisoner transfer was scheduled. Imshi's Khan, a mid-level gang enforcer, with a history of intimidation and bloodshed. Nothing unusual, except for the sudden urgency of this transfer. Ordered directly from the top. Sara's gut twisted. Why now? Why in such a rush? She leashed Rex, running her fingers through his fur. "Stay sharp, boy. Something's off." The convoy rolled out at 9 a.m. A prison van flanked by 2 jeeps, with Sara and Rex in the rear unit. The mist clung to the road like ghostly fingers, swallowing the trees in a pale shroud. Inside the van, Imshi sat chained, his face a mask of quiet defiance. The guards beside him kept their rifles close, eyes cold, but Imshi's didn't flinch. He had the look of a man who knew something no one else did. 15 minutes into the ride, Sara noticed Rex shift. His nose twitched, his muscles tightening under her hand. She frowned. "What is it, boy?" Rex let out a low growl, his eyes fixed on the prison van ahead. Sara felt her pulse quicken. She grabbed the radio. "Lead unit, slow down. Rex is alerting." Static crackled before a gruff voice replied, "Negative. Orders are clear, no stops." Sara's fingers clenched around the mic. "Listen to me. If he's alerting, something's wrong. Pull over now." Silence followed, then the same voice, sharper this time, "Stay in your lane." "Sara, that's an order." Her blood ran cold. That wasn't standard procedure. You never ignore a canine alert, not if you value lives. Sara's instincts screamed louder than the rain pounding on the windshield. She eased the wheel to the right, signaling the van to stop. But instead, the lead jeep accelerated. "Damn it," she hissed, slamming the brakes. The van lurched ahead, picking up speed. The convoy wasn't slowing, they were running. Sara floored the gas pedal, siren blaring as Rex barked furiously, his body rigid with alarm. The road curved sharply, tires skidding on wet asphalt. Up ahead, the lead jeep swung hard, disappearing down a narrow dirt track toward the old industrial district. Sara's heart hammered. This wasn't a transfer. This was an extraction. She gunned the engine, mud splattering as her SUV tore after them. Rex barked wildly, his paws clawing at the dashboard as if urging her faster. Through the mist, she saw Ithavan braking near an abandoned warehouse. Figures spilled out, guns glinting in the weak light. Sara slammed the SUV to a stop and yanked the door open. "Stay low," she shouted into the radio, but the channel was dead, cut off. Betrayed. Rex leaped out, his body tense like a drawn bowstring. Sara crouched behind the door, her weapon raised, eyes scanning the chaos. The guards who were supposed to be protecting the prisoner were shaking hands with the men who had arrived in black SUVs. A deal, right there in the open. Cash exchanged, the prisoner freed from his chains. Sara's jaw tightened. It was inside the unit. Her own people were in on it. One of the traitors spotted her and shouted. Gunfire erupted, bullets chewing into metal and concrete. Sara ducked, returning fire in controlled bursts. "Go, Rex," she commanded. The dog bolted like lightning, a streak of black fur slicing through the fog. He lunged at a man reaching for the van's door, his teeth sinking deep into the arm, dragging him down with a scream. Chaos exploded. Sara moved fast, her boots pounding the wet ground, adrenaline burning through her veins. She fired again, dropping a man who raised his rifle toward Rex. The gang scattered, some diving behind crates, others firing blindly into the mist. The prisoner tried to run, chains clinking as he bolted toward the SUV's butt. Rex was faster. He slammed into him, jaws locking on the thick fabric of his jacket, yanking him to the ground. Sara reached them in seconds, cuffing the man with trembling hands. "Not today," she hissed, dragging him upright as Rex growled low, daring anyone to come closer. Sirens wailed in the distance. No backup. Finally, too late for trust, but just in time to clean up the mess. Minutes later, the scene was a blur of flashing lights, shouting voices, and bodies lined on the ground. Some were dead, others cuffed, and among them, two of her own officers' faces she had trusted now, spitting curses as they were dragged away. Sara stood in the rain, her hands shaking, heart pounding like a drum. Rex sat at her side, his muzzle streaked with mud, eyes bright and fierce. She knelt, pulling him close, her voice breaking as she whispered, "You saved me, boy." Again, the headlines that night painted a grim picture. Police convoy ambush foiled, K9 dog exposes. Corruption within force. But for Sara, the words meant nothing. She had seen too much, trusted too many, and learned the harshest truth, that the real danger wasn't always behind bars. Sometimes, it wore the same uniform you did, that as the rain turned to mist, and the city lights flickered like dying stars. Sara walked back to her vehicle, Rex trotting beside her. They didn't look back. They never would. The courthouse was a fortress. That morning, police lined the steps, their breath fogging in the crisp air. Metal detectors beeped at the entrance, as officers checked every bag, every pocket. Inside, the marble floors gleamed under the harsh lights, reflecting faces tense with anticipation. Today was the final hearing in the most controversial case of the IRA case that had split the city down the middle. The defendant, a former business tycoon named Rashid Qureshi, was accused of orchestrating a brutal massacre to cover up a billion-rupee fraud. His lawyers claimed innocence. The prosecution promised life in prison. Every seat in the courtroom was filled. Reporters, photographers, spectators hungry for drama. Cameras waited outside like vultures for a scrap of chaos. Sara stood near the security checkpoint, her uniform sharp, her eyes sharpest of all. At her side sat Rex, his black tan fur gleaming, his posture rigid, his gaze sweeping the crowd like a silent sentinel. The dog's calm presence gave her comfort, but her gut twisted with unease. High-profile cases like this were magnets for trouble. The clock struck 10. The doors opened, and Rashid entered, flanked by guards. He looked composed, his expensive suit at odds with the handcuffs that bit into his wrists. His eyes swept the room, pausing briefly on the judge, then moving on as if memorizing faces. The murmur of voices died as he was led to the defendant's table. Sara scanned the room carefully. Every instinct screamed at her that something wasn't right. Too many moving parts, too many people trying to look casual. She tightened her grip on Rex's leash. "Stay sharp, boy," she whispered. His ears twitched, his nose lifting slightly, drawing in the scent swirling through the tense air. The hearing began. The judge entered, robes billowing as he took his seat. Lawyers launched into arguments, their voices echoing in the cavernous hall. For an hour, nothing happened, just the usual dance of words, objections, and counter-arguments. And then, in the stillness between statements, Rex stiffened. Sara felt it instantly. The shift in his muscles, the sudden rigidity in his stance. His nose twitched rapidly, drawing in something she couldn't smell, something dangerous. His ears pinned forward, his gaze locking on a man seated near the front row of the gallery. Middle-aged, wearing a grey suit, glasses perched on his nose, his hands folded in his lap like any other spectator. But Rex growled a low, rumbling warning that turned Sara's blood cold. She followed his gaze. The man didn't move, didn't even flinch, but there was something off. Sara's eyes narrowed. His jacket seemed bulky, too bulky for someone Indoors, her hand hovered near her radio. Then Rex barked a sharp, explosive sound that made the courtroom jump. Heads turned. The judge's gavel slammed down. Order. Sara didn't wait. Everyone stayed back. She shouted, racing toward the man as Rex lunged, his body a blur of muscle and fur. The man reacted too slowly. He fumbled inside his jacket, and that was all Sara needed to see the glint of metal. Gun. Drop it, she roared, but the man yanked it free. He didn't aim at her. He aimed at the judge. Rex hit him like a thunderbolt, jaws clamping on his arm. The gun went off, the deafening crack shattering the air. People screamed, diving to the floor as bullets ricocheted off marble walls. The man struggled, cursing, trying to aim again, but Rex was relentless. His teeth sank deeper, his powerful body dragging the shooter down as Sara closed the distance in a heartbeat. She slammed her knee into his ribs, wrenching the gun from his grip. "Clear the courtroom," she yelled, pinning him to the ground, while Rex held fast, growling like a demon. 2 officers rushed in, cuffing the man as he spat venom and threats. Sara kicked the gun away, her chest heaving, ears ringing from the shot. The judge was pale but unharmed, shielded by the quick dive of his clerk. When the dust settled, the truth spilled like poison. The man was a hired assassin, paid to silence the judge before he could deliver the verdict. Inside his jacket were 2 more loaded magazines and a small plastic explosive rigged to a trigger. The entire courtroom could have gone up in flames if Rex hadn't reacted when he did. Reporters swarmed the courthouse. Steps within the hour. Headlines screamed across every channel. K9 hero saves judge in assassination attempt. Footage of Rex, still panting but calm, went viral in minutes. A dog who had stopped death itself in a room full of law and order. Later, as the sun dipped behind the courthouse dome, painting the city in hues of blood red and gold, Sara knelt beside Rex in the empty hallway. She cupped his face in her hands, tears stinging her eyes. "You didn't just save a man," she whispered. "You saved justice." Rex licked her hand, tail thumping softly against the floor, oblivious to the storm he had averted. Outside, the city roared with news, with praise, with chaos. But inside that quiet hallway, there was only a woman, a dog, and a bond forged in the crucible of trust and instinct, a bond that had once again stood between life and death.